You found the house. The price looks right. The neighborhood feels good. The square footage works for your family. You make the offer, it gets accepted, and then you sit down with your lender to go over the full monthly payment, and it's $500 higher than you expected. Not because the mortgage went up, not because of the interest rate, it's the property tax escrow. And nobody really walked you through that part before you fell in love with the house. If you've ever been surprised by a tax bill after buying a home, or you're about to buy, and you want to know what you're really getting into, this one is for you. Hit subscribe before we begin, because this channel covers the stuff buyers and homeowners actually need to know before they make expensive decisions. I'm Jerry Davis, and I've spent years working in and around real estate, renovation, and construction across this country. I've worked on homes in states where property taxes are barely a second thought, and in states where the annual tax bill costs more than some people's entire mortgage payment. And I'll tell you right now, most buyers do not factor this in properly until they're already locked in. So today, we're going through 10 states where property taxes are genuinely scaring buyers away, slowing down the market, or at minimum, making people do a double take before they sign on the dotted line. I'm going to give you real numbers, real context, and some honest opinions on what it actually means to own property in these places. Let's start with the obvious. 1. New Jersey. If you follow real estate at all, you've heard this. New Jersey has one of the highest effective property tax rates in the entire country, sitting right around 1.85 to 2.23%, depending on the county and which data source you're looking at. Now, percentages sound abstract until you do the math. On a median-priced home in New Jersey, which is somewhere around $500,000, you're looking at a property tax bill that can hit $9,000 to $10,000 a year. That is roughly $800 a month just in property taxes on top of your mortgage, principal, interest, and insurance. And here's what people outside New Jersey don't always realize. The tax varies wildly by municipality. Bergen County hits different than Salem County. Hoboken hits different than Trenton. So some buyers think they're dodging the bullet by going to a smaller town, and they still end up with a jaw-dropping bill. The reason taxes are so high in New Jersey is a combination of heavy reliance on property taxes to fund public schools and local services, and a fragmented local government structure with hundreds of individual municipalities all collecting their own taxes. Great schools in many areas, absolutely. But you are paying for that every single month, whether your kids use those schools or not. Illinois is the next one, and this one surprises people more than New Jersey, because the home prices in Illinois are significantly lower. The effective property tax rate in Illinois is right around 1.96%, which makes it the highest in the Midwest by a wide margin. But unlike New Jersey, where you're paying those rates on a $500,000 home, in Illinois, the median home value is closer to $300,000. So the bill lands around $5,000 to $6,000 a year. Still not cheap. And in certain counties, like Lake County north of Chicago, the rates push past 2.5%. which is some of the highest you'll find anywhere in the country. Now, here's the real issue with Illinois for buyers. The state has serious long-term budget and pension funding problems, and property taxes have historically been one of the ways local governments try to cover those gaps. So buyers aren't just looking at today's bill. They're looking at a state with structural financial pressure and wondering where that number goes over the next 10 to 20 years. That hesitation is real, and it's reflected in slower price appreciation compared to comparable Midwest markets. Connecticut, beautiful state, close to New York City, good schools, nice coastal areas. And a property tax rate hovering around 1.63 to 1.92%, with some towns pushing past 2%. On a $400,000 home, you're looking at somewhere between $6,000 and $8,000 a year in taxes. Hartford County is rough. Waterbury is rough. Even some of the nicer suburbs come with bills that make buyers from lower tax states stop and recalculate everything. Connecticut has been dealing with population and outmigration issues for a while now, and property taxes are consistently cited as a major reason why younger buyers and retirees are leaving or choosing not to come in the first place. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot to like about Connecticut. But when you stack the property tax on top of already elevated home prices and a cost of living that doesn't let up, the math gets tight for a lot of buyers pretty fast. New Hampshire is an interesting one because it is actually famous for having no state income tax and no general sales tax. People move there thinking they're escaping taxes, and then they get the property tax bill. New Hampshire funds a huge portion of its government services, particularly education, almost entirely through the property tax. The effective rate is around 1.44%, and on median-priced homes, now pushing close to $500,000, the annual bill can land around $6,000 to $7,000 a year. So yes, you keep more of your paycheck. But if you're a homeowner, that trade-off is more complicated than the bumper sticker makes it sound. A lot of people moving to New Hampshire from Massachusetts or Connecticut are genuinely surprised by this. It's not a trap exactly. It's just a tax they collect in a different place. Vermont is similar. High property tax rates, around 1.44% effective, with median bills close to $5,000 a year. Vermont is already a challenging market for affordability because home values have risen significantly, especially since remote work opened it up to buyers from New York and Boston. Add in the property tax burden, and some buyers who fell in love with the idea of Vermont find the full cost of ownership harder to absorb than they anticipated. The school funding formula in Vermont ties property taxes directly to education spending in a way that can push rates higher in certain towns, depending on enrollment and budget decisions. So the bill isn't just about what your house is worth. It's also about decisions your local school board makes every year. That's a level of variability that makes some buyers nervous. New York. Now, most people associate New York's taxes with New York City. But the bigger property tax story in this state is upstate and the suburbs. In the 5 boroughs of New York City, the property tax situation is actually complicated by abatements and co-op structures that can soften the blow somewhat. But in Westchester County, Nassau County, or Rockland County, you are in some of the highest property tax territory in the country. Broome County in upstate New York has had an effective rate near 2.5%. The statewide effective rate is around 1.43%, but the median annual bill in some of these high-tax counties can push $7,000 to $8,000 a year or more. The brutal part for buyers is that suburban New York already has high home prices, so you're paying a significant tax rate on a significant value. It's a double hit. Texas. And here is where I know I'm going to hear from people in the comments. Texas has no state income tax, and that's real. I'm not disputing it. But the property tax rate in Texas is among the highest in the country, sitting around 1.6 to 1.8% effective statewide. And in some areas of the Dallas-Fort Worth metro, Houston suburbs, and parts of the Austin corridor, the rate climbs even higher once you factor in all the local taxing entities that pile on, including the city, the county, the school district, the community college district, and whatever MUD or special district your subdivision sits in. On a $400,000 home in a suburban Texas market, you can easily be looking at $7,000 to $8,000 a year in property taxes. Buyers coming from California or the Northeast who move to Texas expecting relief sometimes get a property tax bill that closes most of that gap back up. The income tax savings are real, but it's not always the dramatic financial escape people expect. And with Texas home values having risen sharply over the last several years, the base those rates are applied to keeps climbing. Nebraska. This one doesn't get talked about enough. Nebraska has an effective property tax rate around 1.43%, which puts it in the upper tier nationally. On median home values, around $275,000, the annual bill lands close to $4,000 a year. That doesn't sound outrageous compared to New Jersey, but when you frame it against the income levels and the cost of living in Nebraska's markets, it hits harder proportionally. Omaha has been a market buyers have been watching, and the property tax burden is one of the consistent complaints from people relocating there or considering it. The state has had ongoing conversations about property tax relief, but meaningful reform has been slow to materialize, and that uncertainty doesn't exactly build buyer confidence. Wisconsin is another Midwest state where the property tax situation catches people off guard. Effective rate around 1.23%, with median annual bills close to $4,000. In certain Milwaukee suburbs and some of the lake communities in the northern part of the state, the rates can be considerably higher. Wisconsin also has a structure where school levies play a significant role in how local rates are set, so different parts of the same metro area can have noticeably different tax bills on similar homes. Buyers looking at Wisconsin from out of state often ask why similar-sized homes in different suburbs have such different price tags. And a chunk of that answer is the property tax rate embedded in the ongoing cost of ownership. It affects what buyers are willing to pay upfront. And rounding out the 10, Ohio. Effective rate around 1.23%. Median annual bill around $3,100. But Cuyahoga County, which includes Cleveland and its suburbs, is consistently one of the highest property tax counties in the entire Midwest, with rates that can push past 2.5% in certain municipalities. On a home worth $250,000 in a high-rate Cleveland suburb, you could be looking at $6,000 a year or more in property taxes. For a market that attracts buyers precisely because of its relatively low home prices, that property tax burden eats into the affordability advantage faster than most people expect. Ohio also has a school funding mechanism that has been contested in the courts for years, and property taxes have been a central part of that fight. The rates have moved around, and buyers sometimes find that the tax bill they saw when they first looked at a home has changed by the time they close or shortly after. Now look, high property taxes don't automatically mean a bad place to live or a bad place to buy. Some of those states have excellent school systems, strong infrastructure, and real quality of life. The point isn't to scare you away from all of them. The point is that too many buyers focus entirely on the purchase price and the mortgage rate, and never think seriously about what the annual tax bill adds to the full cost of ownership. On a 30-year mortgage, a tax bill that is $3,000 a year higher than you expected adds up to $90,000 over the life of that loan. That's real money. And in some of these states, the rates have been trending upward, not downward. So what you're paying today may not be the ceiling. Before you make any offer on a home, look up the current tax assessment on that specific property. Don't just take the listing estimate. Call the county assessor's office or look it up on their website. Find out when it was last assessed and whether the sale of the home to you could trigger a reassessment at the new purchase price. Because in some states, it absolutely will, and your tax bill can jump significantly in the first year. Ask your real estate agent what the property tax history looks like. Not just the current year, but the last 5 years. Is it stable? Is it climbing every year? That trend tells you a lot. And if you're buying in a state with known budget challenges, it's not paranoid to think about what tax rates might look like 5 to 10 years from now. Tell me in the comments which state you're in or considering moving to. I'd love to know if the property tax situation is part of how you're thinking about it, because I guarantee a lot of you have already gotten surprised by this number somewhere in your homeownership story. The bottom line is this: the sticker price of the house is only the beginning. The real cost of owning a home includes what you pay to keep it every year. Property taxes are one of the biggest recurring expenses homeowners carry, and the gap between the best and worst states on this is enormous. Know the number before you fall in love with the house, not after you've already committed. Hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone you know who's thinking about buying a home, because this is exactly the kind of thing nobody explains clearly until the escrow statement shows up. I'll catch you in the next one.